Despite international objections, trade tensions started by the US have been escalating, and more tariffs have been proposed. What is your comment on those unilateral tariffs?
First of all, we believe that any restriction on global trade is a bad thing, and the trade is very important growth engine. So I think we hope that the countries will find reasonable solutions through the multilateralism and avoid protectionism. So having said that, but still it's very unfortunate now that the trade tension between US and China is escalating. It will have many spillover impact to many other countries and many other regions, especially in Asia, where the trade is very important as a source of growth, and also many Asian economies has close tie with the US and China.
As you mentioned, Asia's economy is highly dependent on trade. And how worried should we be about the impact of trade tensions on the Asian economy?
To quantify this impact of this trade tension is not that easy. So our forthcoming report tried to capture this impact through 3 channels. The first channel is pure trade channel. The second channel is that it may affect the sentiment about investment. And then also it can affect the financial market. So altogether, our model shows that the current package of tariff can reduce the Asia's growth rate in 2 years by 0.9%. In case of China, it can reduce the Chinese growth rate by 0.7%. But at the same time, China and then other Asian economies has room to offset some of this negative impact by stimulus policies. So we are assuming that China will use a little more stimulus to offset some of the negative impact by 0.5% of GDP. So as a result, even though trade tension itself has a 0.7% negative impact, using stimulus, if you can offset 0.5%, then the net impact of this tension will be 0.2%.
Do you believe China has enough room to handle the current trade tensions?
Yes, actually, China has ample room to mobilize its resources to offset some of the negative impact from trade tension, such as fiscal stimulus and some monetary policy. But I want to emphasize that China has been on the deleveraging process, which is necessary to sustain the sustainable growth and the financial stability in the medium term. So the important thing is that when you actually use stimulus to offset some of the negative impact of trade tension, it's very important not to reverse this deleveraging process, which is also very important in the medium term for financial stability. So what we are recommending is, rather than relying on the credit expansion for investment, which China has relied on after the global financial crisis in 2008, we think that China can use stimulus packages, but it is better to focus more on the fiscal side rather than the monetary side. And if you use the fiscal side, it's better to use for enhancing the social safety net and provide more incentive for consumption rather than investment, so that it can also contribute to the rebalancing of Chinese economy.
Now, with the further tightening monetary policy, how big a challenge it is for Asian economy?
This is definitely not a good news. They have to be prepared. If you look at what's happening in Asia, Asian economy is much more resilient compared to the period of the Asian financial crisis in 1997 and 1998, and even after the global financial crisis, Asia economy was quite resilient. But if you look at what happens after February this year, the emerging market turbulence in Argentina, Turkey, is impacting all other emerging economies, including the Asia, and several Asia's economies also facing the pressure in exchange rate and growth inflation. So if I say that I think Asia is well prepared, and Asia's current situation is much better than a previous period, and also compared with other emerging markets. But still, the risk is risk. If we think that this trade tension and the global financial tightening cycle may not end very soon. So it's very hard to politically guess when this trade tension will end between US and China. And also we are expecting that the Fed will continue to increase its interest rate in this year as well as the next year for a couple of more times. So that this coming clouds won't disappear very soon. So I think even though Asians financial market in Asia's countries, status is, conditions is much better than before, but they should not be complacent.
Asia has been at the forefront of digital revolution. What kind of opportunity can this digitalization mean to Asia's future growth?
China is a good example. If you go to Hangzhou and Shenzhen, people do not use money, and many services and many new industries are coming from digitalization industry. So the real issue is whether Asia digital sector can be a new source of growth following the manufacturing-led growth in Asia. So in that sense, our study shows many interesting findings. One, even though there is lots of heterogeneity, compared with peers, digitalization in Asia is relatively much more progressed. So in some sense, Asia is the forefront of digitalization. And then we see there are many good signs that this digitalization help to enhance the productivity of the Asian economy. IT sector alone currently explain more than 1/3 of the economic productivity growth in Asia. And then we find that the online trading is quite popular in Asia, and the company who has access to online has have a higher productivity than compared with the company who doesn't have any access. And then also this digitalization can help the transparency of the government and also help to increase the tax revenue, which is essential for building social safety net and building infrastructure. There are many good aspects of the digitalization in Asia, and the issue is that whether instead of being a consumer of the digitalization, whether actually Asia can develop its own new technology on its own for the digitalization. And for that purpose, I think we need a better education system. Many Asians' education system, like in China, we are very good in producing the blue-collar workers by hard work, all these things, right? For the digitalization, we need the creativity and we need a new technology development. And whether Asians' education system is good for doing it in a long-term sustainable way, that will be a key whether digitalization can be a new source of growth in Asia. I think when you look at now the e-commerce and AI, or the machine learning and whatever you call it, even IT sectors and telecommunication, even cashless society, this whole new technology really changing the way we do the businesses. So far Asia is known for its hard work. We spend lots of time by working, perspiration, and then manufacturing sector, shipbuilding, car, all these things. But as our wage goes up, you cannot just rely on the low-wage manufacturing sector-driven growth. You need a new industry. And then now the digitalization digital sector can actually provide us an opportunity. So I think it's a good sign. And actually there are many evidence that Asia is leading, especially China is actually leading in many areas. But whether we really have this technology developed by our own Asians, or whether still we are borrowing this technology from West, that will decide in the long run whether digital economy can be a new source of growth in Asia or not. But there are many good signs, but still we have to see it.
It has been 40 years since China started to open up and launch economic reforms. What have been the biggest achievement and contribution of China's economy to the Asian region?
Come on, I think in the last 40 years, you can see the 40 years ago how the Beijing looked like, and if you look at how the Beijing and Shanghai look like now, you cannot compare it, right? So you ask me the contribution, and very easily, like in the last 2 decades, China alone explained 1/3 of the whole global growth, and then also almost 1/2 of the Asian growth. After the global financial crisis, when the global economy, advanced economy is going down, it's a China growth which actually support the global growth and moving up the income levels of the global economy. China, this 40 years experience not only helped to enhance the Chinese welfare, which is very true. You have lots of people move out of poverty, but it also contribute to the stability and growth of the Asia, especially, and the global economy.